Welcome to the Strange and Interesting Podcast, a show about folklore, the paranormal, urban legends, and pretty much anything else I happen to find strange or interesting. I am your host, Al. Today, we are going to be talking about my home state of Wisconsin. I've lived here all my life, so I might be a little bit biased when I say that America's Dairyland is both a strange and interesting place. We certainly have our share of cryptids, local legends, and dark history. But did you know that the land of beer, brats, cheese, Harley-Davidson, and the Green Bay Packers once played a role in a power struggle within the Mormon Church? I came about this topic by accident. I was preparing to be a guest on the Conjuring Chaos podcast to discuss the topic of Doveland, Wisconsin. I was looking up a list of ghost towns in my state and came across the town of Voree. This unincorporated community is located in the southeastern part of the state and is now part of the town of Spring Prairie. This town is the discovery place of a mysterious artifact known as the Voree plates. This piqued my curiosity, and I knew I needed to look into this topic further. The Voree plates are a set of 3 brass plates discovered on September 13th, 1845, under a tree on a hill by a Mormon man named James Strang. To understand the significance of the plates, we need to take a look at the history of the early Mormon Church and what the people of this faith believe. Mormonism was founded by Joseph Smith Jr. in the early 1800s. He was born in Vermont and later moved to New York State. As a teenager, he became interested in religion and trying to find the true doctrine of God. He went into the woods near his house to pray and had an experience now called the first vision. Smith tried to pray to God, asking which church he should join, but he felt a dark presence come over him. After 3 tries, he summoned the strength to pray and saw a vision of one or more entities. There are several accounts of the first vision. Depending on the source, he may have encountered God in Jesus Christ, or several angels. The accounts also differ as to what he was told, but it is said he receives a message that all churches were teaching the incorrect doctrine and that he would receive the true doctrine at a later time. I want to mention that we're going to be talking about a name that is used in different contexts in the Book of Mormon. I have heard 2 different ways to pronounce it. According to some Mormons, it is pronounced Moroni. Many years ago, I was talking to a Mormon friend, and he pronounced it Moroni. So that's the pronunciation I will use, plus I find it a little easier to say. Years after his first vision, Smith would receive another vision involving an angel named Moroni. The identity of this entity is a bit murky, but at least from what I have read on the matter, many modern Mormons believe that he is the same as the prophet Moroni, an important figure in the Book of Mormon. Moroni was said to be the guardian of the golden plates and that he became an angel after he died. There's also reference in the Book of Mormon to a military leader named Captain Moroni, though he is a separate person. The angel Moroni guided Smith to a hill near Manchester, New York called Cumorah. In some accounts, This hill was the location of a battle between the prophet Moroni's people and their enemies. Smith claimed to have discovered several gold plates inscribed with hieroglyphics buried on this hill. However, not all of the plates were available to him. About 1/3 of the plates were said to be sealed, either physically or spiritually. Supposedly, these plates contain messages for the end times. Tradition states that Joseph Smith translated the golden plates using a seer stone. He placed the stone into a hat and then pulled the hat around his face to block out all light. He would then dictate the text to an assistant who recorded the words he spoke. Smith claimed the plates were written in Reformed Egyptian, a language not recognized by Egyptologists. Critics of the Book of Mormon have suggested that Smith made this language up because several of the characters on the document he used to translate the plates are very similar to each other with only minor variations. After he was done translating, Smith returned the plates to the angel Moroni. The golden plates are said to be a record on the history of ancient America. Before we continue, I want to stress that this next section deals with some of the major criticisms of Mormonism, including accusations of racism, historical revisionism, pseudo-archeology, and an effort to prove that a lost race of white people used to inhabit the Americas by connecting the events in the Book of Mormon to the Mound Builder civilization. As Europeans started to explore the American continent, they encountered various burial and effigy mounds, as well as fortified cities with large platform mounds. Unfortunately, not all of these mounds survive to the current day. Some were destroyed to make way for crops or to be used for building material elsewhere. So who were the mound builders? The term does not refer to a specific Native American civilization. Rather, it is a blanket term for tribes that practiced mound building. Their earliest earthworks were believed to have been constructed over 6,000 years ago. The practice seemed to have started dying out in the 1500s. There are many reasons for the decline of these civilizations. Overpopulation, overfarming, and overhunting may have caused famine and disease. Political upheavals and war with neighboring tribes may have also contributed to the decline. Then came contact with European settlers. These people brought with them diseases that natives had no defense against. Those who managed to survive outbreaks of disease may have been killed, captured, forced into slavery, or forced to relocate. As early as the 1700s, various writers claimed that the ancestors of today's Native Americans could not have built these mounds. The same view was also applied to the pyramids, temples, and stone structures of Central and South America. Sadly, a common opinion at the time was that the indigenous people of America were simply too primitive to be capable of creating them. These folk claimed that the mounds were really built by another civilization, like the 10 Lost Tribes of Israel, the Norsemen, or survivors of Atlantis. The idea that America was originally inhabited by a race of white people who were wiped out by a race of savage primitives appealed to some of the people of the era. In their minds, they were not involved in genocide and displacing the indigenous population. They were simply reclaiming the land that they believed was rightfully theirs. White Europeans aren't the only ones who have made claims that the indigenous people of the Americas weren't the first ones to inhabit this land. There are black nationalist groups who have claimed that their ancestors were the real first inhabitants of the Americas. One common claim is that ancient Africans settled Mexico and formed the Olmec civilization. Proponents of this theory claim that many of the statues left behind by the Olmecs bear more of a resemblance to sub-Saharan Africans than to the indigenous people of the Americas. The supposed historical events of the Book of Mormon were believed to have taken place between 600 BCE and 420 of the Common Era. These events are summarized as follows. A prophet named Lehi has a vision of the destruction of Jerusalem. This causes him to leave with his family. Years later, they arrive in the Americas. Mormons believe that 4 tribes settled this land: the Nephites, the Lamanites, the Jaredites, and the Mulekites. These groups did not come over all at once, but in separate migrations. Some proposed models of this ancient world include a land to the north and a land to the south, divided by a narrow strip of land. This is believed to represent North and South America, separated by Central America. Another speculation is that the events of the Book of Mormon were far more localized, taking place in the area around Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. In this model, the narrow strip of land is the area where Niagara Falls are located. This model makes more sense because it places the events of the story closer to an important location, the Hill Cumorah. Another localized model places the events in the lands between Guatemala and Mexico. The main focus of this history is the interaction between the fair-skinned Nephites and the dark-skinned Lamanites. After generations of conflict, the 2 tribes receive a visit from the resurrected Jesus. They put aside their differences and live in peace for several generations. The Nephites claimed the land to the north, while the Lamanites were given the land to the south. However, war breaks out again, and the Lamanites kill most of the Nephites. This battle was believed to have taken place at the Hill Cumorah, and as many as 230,000 Nephites may have died. Among the survivors was a man named Mormon. Before he dies, he completed the records that would eventually become the Book of Mormon and passes the golden plates to his son, Moroni. He spends years in hiding from the Lamanites and adds more to the records. After completing this task, he is instructed to hide the plates. There are Mormons today who believe that the events recorded in the Book of Mormon are real, historical events, and the church has made many efforts to back up their claims. However, no scientist, historian, or archaeologist outside of Mormonism believes this to be true. Consider the Hill Cumorah in New York State. If a battle that took thousands of lives did take place here, then we should have found some evidence, like buried weapons or human remains. When pressed on this matter, a typical response is usually something along the lines of the battle taking place at a different location named Cumorah. Or, we just haven't found the real battle site yet. Other skeptics point to the fact that the Book of Mormon references grains and animals that are not native to the Americas. There are also other anachronisms, like steel swords and compasses, which did not exist at the time. Originally, Mormonism taught that righteous people had fair skin and wickedness caused one's skin to darken. Some apologists of this theory believe God darkened the skin of certain races to make them less attractive so they wouldn't interbreed with the fair-skinned races. Religious leaders in the past have often tried to connect dark skin to the curse of Ham. This story has its roots in the Old Testament. The following is from Genesis chapter 9, verse 20 to 27. In this passage, Noah is lying drunk and uncovered. His son Ham saw his father's state and informed his brothers Shem and Japheth. Ham's brothers covered their father without looking at him. When Noah awakens, he places a curse on Ham's son Canaan. The verse is as follows. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. The most common interpretation for this curse is that the Canaanites are to be subservient to the Israelites, though later religious leaders claim that the curse of Ham was actually a dark skin color and thus was used as justification for slavery. Of course, these ideas are rooted in racism, plain and simple. Most people nowadays reject these theories, but there are still people who cling to them as a way to justify their prejudice. So how does all of this connect to a small settlement in Wisconsin? It has to do with the power struggle within the Mormon church at the time. Joseph Smith was killed on June 27, 1844, and there was disagreement about who would lead the church. The three main contenders were Sidney Rigdon, Brigham Young, and James Strang. At the time, Strang was a recent convert and did not have as much recognition as Young and Rigdon. He did claim to have a letter written by Joseph Smith himself that appointed him as the successor, and even claimed that an angel came and anointed him as a prophet. In September of 1845, Strang led 4 witnesses to a tree at a place he called the Hill of Promise. The witnesses reported that there was no apparent evidence of any activity in the soil, and after removing the tree, they dug 3 feet down and found a clay container that held 3 plates. The plates were made of brass and covered with an unknown script, a crude map of the area, and the image of a man surrounded by symbols. According to Strang, the translation was written by an ancient Native American named Raja Manchu of Voree, and the plates were translated as follows: My people are no more. The mighty are fallen, and the young slain in battle. Their bones bleached on the plain by the noonday shadow. The houses are leveled to the dust, and in the moat are the walls. They shall be inhabited. I have in the burial served them, and their bones in the death shade, towards the sun's rising, are covered. They sleep with the mighty dead, and they rest with their fathers. They have fallen in transgression, and are not, but the elect and faithful there shall dwell. The word hath revealed it. God hath sworn to give an inheritance to his people where transgressors perished. The word of God came to me while I mourned in the death shade, saying, I will avenge me on the destroyer. He shall be driven out. Other strangers shall inhabit thy land. I, an ensign here, will set up. The escaped of my people there shall dwell when the flock disown the shepherd and build not on the rock. The forerunner men shall kill, but a mighty prophet there shall dwell. I will be his strength, and he shall bring forth thy record. Record my words, and bury it in the hill of promise. Several witnesses, both Mormon and non-Mormon, claim to have seen the plates. Strang also published a facsimile in the local newspaper. Naturally, there were accusations of forgery, though Mormons of the time believed the plates to be genuine historical artifacts. Control of the Mormon Church would eventually go to Brigham Young. He moved west and settled in Utah. Sidney Rigdon moved to Pennsylvania and founded his own sect. Strang stayed in Wisconsin and formed his own group called the Strangites. The church he founded is still active, though it is not a large denomination within the Mormon community. James would go on to publish another book called The Book of the Law of the Lord in 1851. Some of the material from this book was said to have come from a set of 18 plates that were owned by Laban, a military leader mentioned in the Book of Mormon. Like Joseph Smith, Strang was said to have returned these plates to an angel after he was done translating them. Strang later relocated to Beaver Island, Michigan, and had himself crowned king of his church. His reign, though, was a troubled one, and members of his church often had problems with their non-Mormon neighbors. In June of 1856, he was shot 3 times. He was taken back to Wisconsin and languished for 3 weeks before dying. As for the plates that he discovered, they disappeared around 1900, so no further study of them is possible. While we're on the subject of plates, the golden plates, the plates of Laban, and the Voree plates are not the only plates associated with Mormonism. In 1843, a merchant named Robert Wiley excavated a Native American burial mound near Kinderhook, Illinois, after having a dream of a treasure buried underneath. After digging about 10 feet down, he enlisted the help of several other men to continue digging. Wiley and his crew discovered charred bones and a set of 6 metal plates covered with hieroglyphics. The plates were believed to have been brought before Smith with the request to translate them. He reportedly had the following to say about them. I have translated a portion of the plates, and they contain the history of the person with whom they were found. He was a descendant of Ham, through the loins of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and that he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth. As might be expected, there were people who were quick to label the plates as a hoax, and indeed, that is what they were. Two local residents of Kinderhook, Robert Wiley and Wilburn Fulgate, had an encounter with Mormon missionaries who had proselytized to them with a tract proclaiming that the truth shall spring from the earth. The two men enlisted the help of a local blacksmith named James Cobb. They created the plates by using beeswax and acid to etch the inscription into several copper plates. There is some debate as to what the true purpose of the hoax was, though. Some have claimed that it was a trap for Joseph Smith, and they wanted to prove he really didn't have the ability to translate these texts. Others have claimed that it was meant to play a joke on the local Mormon community. However, belief among the Mormon Church in the Kinderhook plates as genuine ancient artifacts persisted until 1980. Scientific analysis discovered that the plates were a fabrication. The next year, the Church of Latter-day Saints released a statement confirming that there was no evidence that the Prophet Smith attempted to translate the plates, and acknowledged the fact that they were a hoax. So there you have it, another piece of lore from my home state of Wisconsin. It is truly amazing how inspiration for a podcast topic can hit you when you least expect it. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time, everyone, stay strange and stay interesting. Thank you for listening. You have been listening to a presentation of Point of Insanity Game Studio. Visit us on the web at www.poigamestudio.com. Follow me on most social media sites at POI Game Studio, and check out my music channel on YouTube at Al Seeger Music.